situation in Gaza is catastrophic. Various UN agencies have estimated that, a quarter of the civilian population is starving. Some 93% of the people are in a crisis situation. This is, an unprecedentedly quick humanitarian disaster. And it is entirely a product of the siege. The Israeli government is letting in drips and drabs of humanitarian aid, but is clearly grossly inadequate for a population where, a large portion of it is displaced. Domestic commerce has stopped because of the bombing. It's difficult to drive around and even deliver humanitarian aid because of the bombing. And Israel is letting in way too little aid. Partly it just blocks it, partly it imposes bureaucratic obstacles. But the bottom line is, it is collectively punishing the civilian population of Gaza by depriving them of basic necessities at a moment of acute crisis. I was very disturbed to learn of the allegations that a dozen UNRWA employees had participated or been complicit in Hamas's murderous October 7th attack on Israel. And so, a strong reaction to that is appropriate. I'm not sure that it was necessary to suspend aid because UNRWA has already vowed that it's going to get to the bottom of this. It could prosecute people. So it's taken the appropriate position. My, concern, frankly, is the irony of this because, here there's this allegation that a dozen UNRWA employees did something wrong, seriously wrong. But, that was enough to get the US to suspend aid. But then when Israel is, has just been found by the International Court of Justice to plausibly be committing genocide in Gaza, when there's already abundant evidence that it's committing large-scale war crimes through its indiscriminate bombing, its disproportionate attacks on the civilian population, its deprivation of basic necessities in terms of humanitarian aid from that population. These war crimes have not been enough to get the US to suspend its $3.8 billion in annual military assistance to Israel or to stop the sale of arms to Israel. So there's a bit of a disconnect here. Yes, UNRWA, a handful of employees did something wrong, or at least are alleged to. But Israel, there's enormous evidence that at the most senior levels, as a matter of government policy, it is committing huge crimes in Gaza, but the US keeps the aid flowing. I wish that there was, some comparable reaction to what Israel's doing as there has been to these allegations about UNRWA. At this point, I'm not sure that it had an effect because the decisions have just been taken. Clearly, as I mentioned, the humanitarian situation in Gaza is catastrophic, but to have the aid suspended, it's not as if UNRWA is living, hand to mouth. I'm sure they have enough money to pay their staff and to keep the supplies going for a period of time. But if this suspension becomes long-term, then it turns a catastrophic situation into an even bigger disaster. I just wish that the United States, in its quick decision to suspend aid to UNRWA because of allegations of wrongdoing by a handful of employees, I wish there was some comparable sensitivity to clear wrongdoing by the Israeli government at a much larger scale, which is being supported to the tune of $3.8 billion in annual military assistance. And the idea that that keeps going, that's uninterrupted, there's no suspension, despite the widespread war crimes, despite the International Court of Justice's finding of plausible genocide, that's unconscionable.